So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay. As I'm sure you can tell already, this is going to be a Moria siege, quite a substantial one as well. A notoriously difficult location to take, but the attackers do have 5 armies on the field today. So against the defenders 3, they certainly have a numbers advantage, so we shall see if the defenders are going to be able to hold on. I'll go through the army compositions relatively quickly because this is going to be a long siege, and of course this is on point 96, so we are at this point quite familiar with what the armies are all about. And we shall start off down here with Agalar Galudolithon. He has changed his second name, most confusing, but he's playing as the Witcher of Angmar once again. Angmar, probably the most popular of the Orc factions to play because they do have the most muscle when it comes to sustaining an attack. Mordor do have the stronger elite units overall, but Angmar do have the ability to sort of fill their line with a little bit more quality, whereas Mordor have to make do mostly with standard and Rannon infantry and Black Legion. Angmar have units like the Guardians of KHAZAD-DUM here, not particularly damaging, but very survivable, good shield, good armour, and obviously very good on the front line to survive and soak up those hits. Got some Snaga Stalkers pushing the ram up, of course, bit of fodder pushing the ram. Over here we do have a combination actually of the Blackwatch Legion, excuse me, I swear my allergies are starting to affect my throat, which is not great. But there's also, I think, some Witcher-Realm Blackguard in there as well. But regardless, there's a huge, massive unit here. Blackwatch Legion obviously going to be very useful in a choke point heavy map like this. But also we have the Witcher-Realm Scourge Raiders, which are terrible when they're under arrow fire, especially without the armour upgrade as they are here. But they're actually not half bad in melee because of their skill. They're able to do a decent amount of damage against the right targets. Out here on the flank, Angmar Marauders again, just a disposable unit that they can commit forwards without thinking too hard about it. Back here we've also got some Trolls, so just some Trolls of Gundabad. Trolls in this sort of situation can be burnt down pretty quickly by elite infantry actually, but they can also be just the thing to break a line that is failing nice and quickly. And then we've got the General's Bodyguard unit, which is the Witcher-Realm Hammer Guard, obviously arguably the strongest hammer unit in the game at the moment. It is arguable though. There's a few decent armor-piercing shock troops. Obviously, again, the Witcher-Realm Enslavers from Rudau count among those number, but also the Girions Paladins from Dale, Tharbad Warhammers from Cardland. There's a bit of competition there for the Witcher-Realm Hammer Guard, but of course, it is worth mentioning that the Smiths of Eregion, or the Gwaith Emirdain, are going to be made a two-handed hammer unit in the next patch as well, so they will almost certainly usurp the Hammer Guard as being the top dogs in that regard, because most Imladris infantry does tend to sit the top spot in whatever category you're looking at. Over here we have Belisar, who's going to be playing as Isengard. All of his units are very much clustered around here. I hope he can get down from here, otherwise... Oh yeah, I'm sure he can. I'm sure that's a pathway down, but I was going to say that looks like a cliff that's impassable, so he might be marooned up here, but unfortunately it doesn't look like that's the case. So as Isengard, obviously you can see a lot of Uruk-hai pikemen, quite a lot of Dunlanders in there actually as well, including the Berserkers. The anti-cavalry bonus will almost certainly not be useful on this map, but still, the Dunlanders are capable of dishing out a bit of damage for their cost. The Uruk-hai crossbows are also going to be very important because the defenders will probably have some crossbows based on the factions that are there today, and also an Isengard ballista, which could be very devastating, but it could also be focused down by the enemy before it actually manages to get too many shots off. Some half-orcs in there as well. I'd imagine there's some Nazkai knocking around as well. Let's go over to this side of things as well. So 3 armies going to be attacking this side. We do have Rudau as well, played by Bloodbath McGrath, and very similar story over here. Rudau swordsman, a lot of pikes. Dunman pikemen are over here, I think, as well. There is some Pranadine pikemen in there as well. Pranadine pikemen I'm a big fan of. They do tend to perform very well for their cost, even if you can't get too many before the red limit is implanted on them. Dunman hunters, and that's pretty much it. I'm sure that there are, yes, the animals trying to, so there's bound to be some javelins, axe throwers in there as well, some standard Rudau axemen, so obviously a bit more AP, Pranadine berserkers. So very much an aggressive AP focused faction is Rudau, and that should come in handy based on who the defenders are. Over here on this side we do have Khan, played by Favalur. Khan, I'm a fan of Khan actually and how they play, because they're a little bit more, they have that evil men flavour to them where they're able to field quite a lot of units, and this goes for their cavalry as well. So Khan's main strength on horseback does tend to be the fact that they can outnumber the enemy with horse archers and melee cavalry, rather than have the outright most quality on horseback. But of course this is not going to be a cavalry focused fight, it's going to be infantry focused, and Khan does have a few options here. The light infantry of course are just their fodder though. The nomadic axemen are a decent cheap axe unit, to be fair. Up here we also have quite a few Variag warriors on display by the looks of things. Looks like 4 units of them. And as I said before, as far as heavy swordsmen go, they're probably one of the worst in the game, honestly, but they are also one of the cheapest in the game, so it very much matches up with their cost. And they do offer a little bit of skill where most of Khan's infantry is focused on AP. Speaking of which, Brotherhood of the Axe, a very strong axe unit indeed. This is one of those units which, outside of those units which have multiple HP, the Brotherhood of the Axe are one of the stronger units, just because of their ability to deal out a lot of damage very quickly to armoured targets. Nomadic Marauders, some Brotherhood Shadow Blades as well, so some nice throwing knives that they're going to be using, as well as dishing out a lot of skill-based damage in melee. Variag Bowmen. Back here we've got the AP-focused Nurad Footmen, the skill-focused Brotherhood of the Sword, very skillful indeed, and then at the back some archers, some Nomadic Infantry, and Nomadic Raiders. And then finally, the other army that's attacking this side, we do have Mordor, played by Lappy, so as I said before, they look like they've gone for a more numbers-focused approach than Angmar, as they often do. Some Orc Archers, some fodder, but they also have some Morannon units over here as well. Morannon Halberds, Black Legion of Barad-dûr for that pushing power, Sauron's Will for the AP, and I think they encourage nearby. It's either encouragement or fear, and I think it's encouragement, actually. So we have the Olakai as well, some nice trolls, mountain trolls, Orc Javelins as well, obviously very cheap but very effective. Morannon Infantry, and then over here some Minas Morgul Chosen, very durable spear unit, and then finally the General's Bodyguard unit of standard Temple Executioners. So let's have a little look at what is on the defence today. So we have Roger that playing as Cardolan. So Cardolan, morale is one of the issues that Cardolan do have to face, but I think most people are starting to realise now that Cardolan, they actually are a competitive faction, and as long as you keep their morale buffing units close by, their units are actually very, very efficient at what they do. So we've got some Minas Tirith archers, so again, heavily armoured, in a good position here, although I think they will probably be pulled back. I think their main purpose of being here is just putting some stakes on the floor. But there is no cavalry anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. They're also backed up by Greenwatch Garrison Footmen, obviously a very good cheap pike unit, the centre of a lot of what Cardolan do. Backed up in turn by Minas Tirith Spearmen, presumably for the mass to make sure that they can't just push through them, although they're going to need more than that if the Black Legion of Barad-dûr are committed early. We have more Cardolan forces back here. Looks like 3 units actually of Minas Tirith Sharpshooters, so into the red limit, but very much a worthwhile thing to do because Cardolan's crossbows are so good, not only at range but also in melee. They pull out those maces, so it's a good investment all around. Cardolan Catapult as well. Some Dunedain Captains, obviously a very good heavy swordsman, a bodyguard tier heavy swordsman. They do not have the armour upgrade, which gives them their full plate, but even so they should be more than sufficient for cutting their way through low tier orcs for quite some time. We have some elves as well, played by new player 195, who is most certainly not a new player, and not anymore. He's playing as Lothlorien, actually. Lothlorien should be quite comfortable in this situation, with a little bit more money to play with, seeing as it is a 3v5. They'll be able to bring a lot more of their nastier units, Maithir Lasgallen. Obviously the Javelins are going to be the main thing here, more so than their spears. Dunedain Rangers, very menacingly placed, getting ready to shoot right along the choke point there. Dwarves of KHAZAD-DUM, played by Eclipse 2500, who sent me the battle replay today. KHAZAD-DUM fighting on home turf, and they have got some Mithril Guard over here, as well as the AP from the Tharbad Warhammers from Cardolan. Again, into the red limit for this unit, 2 units of Wardens of Tir Gorthad, and they of course have the Encouragement Aura, which is very nice, Manatar Roman Guardians, Halberds in melee of course, Sindar Archers, Karas Galadhon's Guardians, Lothlorien Axes, a lot of very nasty units indeed, Hearthguard of Amon Sul as well, so a lot of elite units on display here. I think, yeah, it looks like the Elves and Cardolan once again are going to be holding down this front line. Minas Tirith Spearmen, Blades. We have some Greenwatch Garrison Footmen and some Ethel Tirith as well. On the other side, it does look as though, based on the minimap, that KHAZAD-DUM are going to be taking the first defence over here, which is going to make life very difficult, actually, for the attackers to get through here, especially when they've got a lot of Lothlorien backing them up, including Sylvan Rangers, nasty Lothlorien Archers, Ethel Tirith, Galathrim Nobles as well. So yeah, there's maybe 3 armies over here, but they're going to have a real tough time knocking their way past Lothlorien, but primarily KHAZAD-DUM over here. All of their units pretty much. Legion Bodyguard, 2nd Legion Axe Guard, Hammers of Gundabad, 1st Legion Pikes, 4th Legion Shield Guard, some Sylvan Spears lending a hand, KHAZAD-DUM Reclaimers, some 3rd Legion Infantry, and then just a narrow front line of warriors on the front, just to make sure that fodder just can't come in. And then as soon as any more elite units come in, I'm sure KHAZAD-DUM will mobilise, but I'll make a small cut here until the gates are down and the attack begins. So probably not too surprising to see one of Angmar's most potent tools lumbering through the gates, of course the Barrow-wights, which were hidden at the start of the game. The Warriors of KHAZAD-DUM still in shield wall formation, of course, one of the few line infantry units that has access to that. But with the Barrow-wights here, they are going to need some more potent forms of damage. The KHAZAD-DUM Reclaimers could offer that, to be fair, although perhaps the KHAZAD-DUM Reclaimers don't want to commit all of their ammo to what is essentially a sponge for damage. Barrow-wights, of course, are very, very resilient, and I think actually the Warriors of KHAZAD-DUM They are going to retreat by the looks of things, or are they just shuffling into a V-shaped formation? Yeah, they weren't retreating. So the Barrow Wights charging into melee with the Warriors of KHAZAD-DUM. Warriors of KHAZAD-DUM are almost certainly going to need a pretty hefty amount of backup to deal with this, and they are going to receive some in the shape of the Hammers of Gundabad. Looks like they're going to get quite a nice charge actually here, the Hammers of Gundabad. Nope, they stopped moving. The Barrow Wights are being backed up by Snaga Stalkers as well. You can see the Barrow Wights are doing their thing where they sort of go a little bit crazy when they're being pressured by high mass units. They tend to start jumping around all over the place. Hammers of Gundabad are now charging in with the backup of some 3rd Legion and some 1st Legion. I mean, this is certainly not an easy position to take. And I mean, the Dwarves are pushing in a long way here, in such a long way that so many units are here that the frames are dropping. The Barrow Wights are starting to go all over the place, which you might think is actually good for Angmar because it introduces a little bit more chaos, but it does mean that the Barrow Wights, you can see that a lot of them are starting to fall away actually. Because they are starting to get overwhelmed here in the back line. Now, it is worth saying that these dwarves on the front line which push their way forward are also going to be in a fairly substantial amount of trouble pretty quickly. They're going to get overwhelmed by Snaga and also some orcs that are following them in. The Witcher-Armed Scourge Raiders are there. But this has broken up Angmar's assault, and the Barrow Wights are not really used to being bullied like this. But of course KHAZAD-DUM are quite capable of doing that. Oh my. That is a unit of Rangers, I believe. Indeed it is. The Sylvan Rangers are right here, shooting right into that blob, and they're going to be able to do tremendous amounts of damage, because Angmar have blobbed up a huge amount. So this is too good an opportunity to pass up. There's nothing too elite in there, it's mostly Scourge Raiders and Snaga Stalkers, but they're so closely packed together that you can't say no to that opportunity. Meanwhile, over on this side, taking a little bit slower, because Cardland did pull back, and as with most Moria sieges, it does look as though on this side in particular, it's going to be a little bit more of a skirmish-heavy affair. The Nomadic Raiders being pushed up. I didn't see too many archers from Mordor, however, and based on the amount of archers that those are sharpshooters as well, so sharpshooters and Miniscarithlan archers immediately starting to shoot into the advancing positions, although it might be a waste of sharpshooter ammunition to go after Nomadic Raiders and Orc fodder, but even so, these attackers are not going to last too long in here. You can see how quickly they're starting to fall off. Crossbows have a lot of stopping power, even at this sort of distance. You can see that Cardland also have, using the hill for cover, have got their front line. Looks as though those Nomadic Raiders are actually trying to shoot those pikemen, but it's not going to yield too much in the way of casualties for the attackers because it's a very difficult angle. Looks like they have changed their target now. But again, based on the numbers of skirmishers Cardland have over here, and also the Miniscarithlan archers, heavily armoured, got that shield on the back, it's going to be difficult to wear them down in this manner. I would suggest maybe a little bit more brute force might be needed to deal with Cardland, but we shall see. Meanwhile, this front line over here, there's still a lot of Barrow Wights left alive, but they have been split rather spectacularly, so the dwarves using their mass, pushing through in a significant fashion there. The Hammers of Gundabad starting to pull out a little bit. You can see that Angmar Marauders, Witcher-Armed Scourge Raiders, they've been absolutely laid to waste by a combination of the Dwarven Infantry and the Sylvan Rangers. The dwarves are now forming up a front line again, so Eclipse recycling his men, regrouping them, making sure that they don't push too far. Both units of Barrow Wights are still on the front line, and both, they have taken a fairly hefty amount of damage, both of them, but they are still present. And now the dwarves are going to, and there's a lot of axes being thrown, which indeed the Trollshaw Axos from Rudauer, Bloodbath, McGrath supporting his Angmar ally, and of course thrown axes and javelins are an excellent way to deal damage to the dwarves very quickly. They tend to be a little bit slow, heavily armoured. That armour-piercing damage is very, very useful as the thrown axes come in support of the Barrow Wights. Don't know what the dwarves are going to do. There's a few Barrow Wights that have leaked around the sides, but I mean, it says that victory still seems certain for them, although I doubt that will be the case if they keep taking men off the front line like this. The 3rd Legion alone probably won't be able to hold back what's left of the Barrow Wights. Damaging as they may be, the Barrow Wights are capable of taking quite a lot of punishment, and now also they're going to receive some backup from some Rudauer infantry as well. Some Rudauer swordsmen on the way forward with their hexagonal shields. Let's see over here. The skirmish fight is still ongoing. It is indeed. Unsurprising to see, but I mean, here are the Nomadic Raiders. They're trying to get some damage done. But I really doubt that they're going to be able to worry Cardland all that much here. Because there isn't that much in terms of skirmishers on this side, I don't think. I mean, Khan have got a couple more, but I didn't see a huge amount from Mordor. They've got some javelins, sure, but javelins need to get far closer. And they'll be absolutely ripped to pieces by archers if they do that. So yeah, Mordor very much with the a bit more brute force about their army, and they are going to have to deploy that at some point, because I don't think they're really going to get too much damage done. I don't think they're really going to soften up the enemy all that much. The best they can hope for is that they bait them into using a lot of their crossbow ammunition before the joint infantry assault begins, because those crossbows can be deadly. Really stopping the Khand and Mordor assault in its tracks. Meanwhile, over here, you can see some Dunlanders also moving in, so the wild men of Dunland and Rudauer fighting side by side alongside the Barrow-wights. And this is where you'd imagine, yeah, this first dwarven defence is now starting to fall away a little bit. Defeat, it seems certain. Only a military genius could win this battle. Yeah, I mean, well, those, baiting those axe throws and using a bit more of their ammunition may very well be worthwhile. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that the dwarves are now coming back into melee. I thought they were sort of retreating so they could set up a secondary position. If they were going to come back in anyway, they may as well have stayed in melee. And also, in coming back into range, those Trollshaw axe throwers have got a very nice shot on them. Axes raining down on the new dwarven reinforcements that have come in. First Legion pikemen as well. Definitely a very nice target to go after, as are the Hammers of Gundabad. I believe the Hammers of Gundabad are lot morale as well, so they will stand and fight to the bitter end. But the bitter end may come sooner than they would like, especially seeing as those axe throwers are now very much in range in Willow. However, now I can see why the dwarves came forward once again, seeing the opportunity to blob up the enemy once again. The Sylvan Rangers getting into position to shoot right through the ranks of the enemy. However, I think they are going after the Trollshaw axe throwers. They're carving through them extremely quickly. The Trollshaw axe thrower is very weak to arrows, of course. They're actually getting closer to the rest of their men as well, which is not good, because that means they're going to be able to shoot through the infantry as well. Brutality itself. Oh, when I am on top of Moria. Let's see here. Miniscarith and Archers, still a very slow-paced skirmish over on this side. But sooner or later, Karland are going to run out of archers with which to wage this kind of warfare with, and they're going to have to close in, and it's going to be hard on this side, I have to say, with 2 armies rather than 3. It's mostly Cardland over here, but we did see that Lothlorien are poised to reinforce the positions where needed, so it does seem as though Cardland have taken this side, KHAZAD-DUM have taken the other side, and Lothlorien will reinforce with some elven quality as and where they're needed. Meanwhile, see over here, the Barrow-wights, they're still alive on the front line, but they are starting to fall away now. 46 of them remain. And with a very high damage unit on the front line, like the Hammers of Gundabad, and you can see the 1st Legion pikes are just forcing the enemy back. One problem the Barrow-wights do have, of course, is a low mass, so the dwarves are able to just sort of push through them with relative ease. And it looks, yeah, this attack as well has failed once again. Those Sylvan Rangers have really proven to be a problem for the attackers so far, because the dwarven defence, initial defence, still holds strong. What do they have ready to come in now? Dunman Spearmen. Not really the heroes the attackers need at this point. Just more fodder marching into place. If it is a war of attrition, though, the attackers do have a lot of manpower to burn through. What will the dwarves do now? It looks as though they're actually trying to reorganise themselves. They might be pulling back. Those KHAZAD-DUM reclaimers still haven't used any of their ammunition yet. Nor will they against Dunman Spearmen, I have a feeling. Although, to be fair, there are some Uruk-hai crossbows very close by now as well. Although a lot of those bolts just went into the cliffside, which is unfortunate for them. More Dunlanders moving forward, some Dunman pikemen on the way forward as well. Trying to go pike to pike with the 1st Legion. Probably not going to work out for the Rudauer forces all that well. Yeah, a lot of those crossbow bolts are just going into the cliffside. Yeah, you can see here that it's not great for them. If you want to skirmish with the enemy on this map, you need to enter the settlement. You need to fight on their terms. And the crossbows clearly not wanting to do that, but wasting a few volleys, burying their bolts into the archway that leads into Moria. Sylvan Rangers coming forward once again. And again, it's a big blob that they have to shoot at. It's mostly low-tier Dunman units once again, but the amount of casualties they can inflict very, very quickly here. Look at the blob. It's too good a target to pass up. And also the pikemen in particular will just get cut down so easily. More 4th Legion Shield Guard on the way forward. The guards of KHAZAD-DUM, so Eclipse is not willing to let the enemy into Moria at all. The dwarves not wanting the orcs to get any further than the entryway into their home. And with the assistance of those elven rangers, they may very well be successful in holding them at bay for good. Well, you can see these Nomadic Raiders. I mean, I think at this point they're so depleted that Cardland may very well just be waiting for them to run out of ammunition. Minisk and Archers, of course, I don't know what Bother is doing. He's signing in and out of Conqueror's Blade over and over again. I really need to turn the notifications off when I do this. It really just keeps skipping my mind. Nomadic Raiders. I think Cardland is just content to let them impotently waste their ammo, really. Minisk and Archers, well armoured, well shielded. Standing up reasonably well to the very basic archers of Khan. Khan preferred to do their shooting on horseback after all. Khan did have that unit of nomadic infantry as well, but again, it's all quiet on this front really. Very different battles happening on each side. Because over here, it's very much an all guns blazing kind of affair. Some Witch Realm Scourge Raiders have come forward, but you saw how quickly they started to fall away. And already I imagine these Sylvan Rangers have racked up quite an impressive kill count indeed. The Dwarven Infantry holding them in place. And with that, the Sylvan Rangers are able to get a lot of damage done. The Dwarves, though, starting to pull back by the looks of things. Breaking up that assault. The Frandaline Berserkers are moving forward, which is probably why their projectiles at range are very, very deadly. And they're pretty good in melee against the Dwarves as well, with very high AP values. And look at that. Quite a lot of those 4th Legion Shield Guard getting axes buried in their backs. Again, another volley. Less successful, that one. Another less successful volley. Back go the Dwarves. Some routing Witch Realm Scourge Raiders, although they're routing into Moria. So they're not going to get too far, you would imagine. Ranadine Berserkers are here, engaging in melee. I'm a big fan of the Ranadine Berserkers as a unit. They don't have too much in the way of ammunition. But, hold on. There we go. Hopefully that works. Anyway, Granadine Berserkers. I like them because they don't have a lot of ammunition, but they are still quite capable of dishing quite a lot of damage at range, as you saw. When they had a volley which landed, those 4th Legion Shield Guard fell away pretty quickly. But also in melee, the AP, and there's a lot of AP going forward now. Actually, Dunland Wild Berserkers, or Dunlanding Berserkers now, had their name shortened, coming in to add some additional armour piercing. Dunman Spearmen just here to be a bit of a meat shield on the front line, I think. It's a lot of AP that's here, but the problem that the attackers are having is the fact that the 1st Legion Pikes are keeping them at range. You can see that the Franadine Berserkers are not really able to get into close quarters where they want to be. And perhaps worse for them is now the KHAZAD-DUM Reclaimers, seeing the Franadine Berserkers as a worthy enough target to use their ammunition on, starting to loose their axes. Even if they miss, they'll at least hit something in the Dunland Berserkers. So there really is no rest for the weary. The attackers have really had a really tough time getting in here, but it is worth saying that the Dwarves are committing most of their army to this defence. So as soon as they do break through, the Dwarves, they pretty much have, well, I say that, there is an Elven position here which is mostly made up of archers, which probably retreat honestly if the defence falls. They would pretty much have a clear shot to the town centre, which of course still is not easy because Lothlorien will still have a lot of resources with which to stop them. The Mithril Guard are lying in wait, even Cardland could send over some troops if need be, but the attackers don't need to get disheartened just yet. Snaga Archers moving into position, so Sun, ranged support. Although they're not really going to be able to get into the settlement to use their bows, and being used as fodder infantry is a bit of a waste really. Any sort of range pressure you can put on the defenders is always nice. 4th Legion Shield Guard coming back a little bit depleted, but getting ready to join the fray nonetheless. And actually it looks as though the balance of forces is evenly matched. You can see that with this, they started to wrap around, and now they're trying to just sort of smash through with a bunch of fodder and basic spears to destabilise the Dwarven front line. looks like they're succeeding as well. Defeat seems almost certain, does it? I don't know. If any faction can fight outnumbered like this, it's KHAZAD-DUM in 0.96. Very, very strong, of course. The axes still come in. Most of these axes are going to be hitting very basic units, though. 4th Legion Shield Guard moving in. Some Sylvan Spears also getting ready to join the front line. Of course, not quite as heavy duty as the Dwarves, but more skillful. More melee defense. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to wear them down, especially with the armor-piercing units. The Sylvan Spears will be pretty ideal for blunting them a little bit. Meanwhile, we have a melee engagement happening over here, so finally the skirmishing. They did actually have some Orc Archers, Mordor, but again, it doesn't look like they've achieved too much of anything either. You can see there that the Miniscarithan Archers have got a very nice shot into the initial Khand and Orc assault. Orc Fodder and Nomadic Light Infantry having to go up against the Miniscarithan units and the Greenwatch Garrison Footmen. So Cardland having a distinct quality advantage here. They are technically having to fight uphill, which will tire them out more quickly. But it's worthwhile to make sure they can't be shot. Because overall, in terms of quality, they should be just fine here. Orc Fodder and Nomadic Light Infantry are unlikely to give Cardland too many sleepless nights. But as soon as some more heavy-duty units come forward, like the Black Legion of Barad-dûr, some of the Morannon units, they may need to start thinking about utilising their crossbows to give this front line a little bit of support. But still, Greenwatch Garrison Footmen and more Spearmen also in reserve. There's some crossbows right next to the front line. I'm not sure if they have the best of shots. It might be worthwhile to just put them on the other side of the bridge again. But still, the Cardland front line fairly comfortably holding for now. A lot of people have said that Cardland do look a bit generic medieval in this patch, and I do agree, but they're going to be given a little bit more of a Numenorian look in 0.97, which I actually really like. A lot of the new units in 0.97 look tremendous, actually. And we're now so close to seeing its full version. Getting stuck in the wall there, but here we can see that again, with the reinforcements from the elves, a couple of units of Sylvan Spears that were committed forwards. Once again, the attackers have had their assault stopped. And another wave is going to be necessary to try and break it down. Few arrows coming through the gap though. The Dunman Hunters actually are able to get through because they're shooting a unit which is of a good angle, so they can shoot through the gap. But KHAZAD-DUM Reclaimers, they may not have a shield, but they do have very thick dwarven plate on. So a unit of basic archers like that is unlikely to deal huge amounts of casualties to them. Over time though, maybe the dwarven player will, because it will still get some kills, and just sort of standing there will allow Rudau to get a bit of value off one of their very basic archers. Meanwhile, on this front line, elves and dwarves fighting side by side against the hillmen. And having a relatively easy time of it at the moment, because it's just basic Dunmanders and basic Dunman units. This is a very risky manoeuvre indeed. The Franadine Rangers, the General's unit for Bloodbath McGrath, he has put himself on the line, and I don't think there's a huge... I mean, they're shooting at something. Are they going to shoot at the KHAZAD-DUM Reclaimers? I would imagine so. No, they must be. Interesting choice of target, because it's not exactly a huge blob they're shooting at, and the Rangers could be exactly the sort of tool the attackers need in the late game. And I think the Franadine, well, unless the Lurtz hunting pack were in that big Isengard blob, but it's very possible that's the only unit of Rangers the attackers have. Meanwhile, a few crispy piles of corpses there, indicating the use of the Cardland catapult. Indeed, you can see it in the background over there. Not worth using it on this front line. You can see there are some more reinforcements coming in, some more Nomadic Light Infantry heading towards the front line. Yeah, but this assault is unlikely to gain any real traction until some stronger units come forward. You can see that the Cardland forces are exhausted though, because of fighting uphill. But the Cardland forces are going to be very comfortable here. Even Miniscarithan Spearmen, who aren't really the fastest at killing infantry, with that Spear Malice, are going to be very comfortable against units of this type when they're backed up by pikemen. The armour is really going to help them in melee, have that little bit extra longevity. Cardland's armour in general is pretty good, as it is with most of the Western Kingdoms of men. Rudau obviously certainly being an exception there, and Rohan you could also put in that. Their armour isn't bad, but it's certainly not up to the levels of the other kingdoms in the West. Orc archers still firing away, but yeah, those sharpshooters, they're in loose formation. A lot of those hits are missing, and even those that do, that Cardland plate armour combined with the chain underneath, able to hold them at bay. Miniscarithan archers that are out of ammunition coming forward, and they can be used as a makeshift infantry unit to hold the front line, and as long as it's only up against nomadic light infantry and orc fodder, they too should be able to do a decent job on the front line. Although of course when a more quality unit comes forward they will find themselves hopelessly outmatched. It's all about picking your engagements. Meanwhile, oh my, actually being forced back, and I assume that was in response to the Thranodine Rangers coming forward. Thranodine Rangers taking some casualties, they're stuck on the front line. This was always going to be a possible outcome of this, and as a result though, the Witch Realm Enslavers have come forward, and the Witch Realm Enslavers will be able to do a lot of damage to these Dwarven infantry units, one of the strongest AP bodyguard units in the game. They're also being backed up by those pikes, but there goes the Rudau General. I thought it was a risky move to put the Thranodine Rangers that close to the front line. I thought though it was more risky from a sort of range standpoint. I thought one of the Elven archers would simply come forward and shoot them to death. Rangers of course very poor in a skirmish fight. But that did not turn out to be the case. The dwarves just pushed on through and killed a lot of them. Only 35 of them left. So again, a very good catch there from the dwarves of KHAZAD-DUM, although they may very well pay the price for blunting that ranger unit, because now there's a lot of Rudauer and Isengard forces on the front line, including those pikemen, but the Witch Realm Enslavers are the real problem, because that AP damage is going to be significant. And I don't think there's a lot of these 1st Legion pikemen left, only 7. The rest made up of 4th Legion Shield Guard, which can do the job of infantry very well, of course. They don't suffer from a spear malice, but the Witch Realm Enslavers with that AP damage are still going to be a major concern on the front line here. Supported by those very basic pikemen as well, Rudau pushing in. There is a case for saying that maybe one of the units of Blackwatch Legion could be used here to really break this front line wide open, or at least the half-orc spear guard which are in there should be slapped into shield wall and then pushed through the enemy lines. But we shall see. Oh then, let's see what they've still got in reserve. Well, I mean, yeah, the dwarves still have a fairly substantial force down here, as well as elven reinforcements, including swordmasters. Swordmasters are exactly the sort of thing which Rudauer certainly won't want to see. And you can see here that this I think this dwarven defence is finally about to fall. I mean, they do have another unit of 2nd Legion Axe Guard once again ready to receive the invaders, but a single unit of them I don't think is going to be enough against the onslaught that is waiting. Just a pile of bodies here. At this point the pile of bodies would probably be taller than the dwarves themselves. Fortunately for them, however, the corpses in Medieval 2 are 2D. Meanwhile, it looks like a little bit of progress has been made by Karnd over here. There are these Orc Javelins on the front line, but it's still just Nomadic Light Infantry and Orc Fodder on the front line. And based on the amount of reinforcements Cardland have close by, they're still going to be able to hold this front line without too many issues, to be honest. More units coming forward. It's Nomadic Marauders. And you can see immediately with Orc Javelins and Nomadic Marauders on display, that's exactly the sort of target which Cardland are going to go after immediately. Very easy to kill at range, both of them. Nomadic Marauders especially, they're shirtless after all. At least the Orc Javelins have got a small wooden shield, even if it is rather useless. But yeah, you can see here that I think the Nomadic Marauders and Orc Javelins are thinking better of their decision. The Nomadic Marauders certainly should, because they're getting showered, I think, with crossbow bolts as well. Are they? No, it's Dunedain Rangers. I mean, that actually is maybe a little bit of a waste. Dunedain Rangers I would save until Karnd and Mordor are really pushing in blobs. We saw how effective the Sylvan Rangers could be on the other side. Dunedain Rangers, no different in the amount of effectiveness they can hold. But still not a huge amount of progress being made by the attackers, and the defenders still very comfortable in holding this position. But now, the floodgates have opened. The Trolls are coming in, the Blackwatch Legion are coming in. For the attackers, the time is now. This could be the defining moment of the entire battle, this, honestly. If Angmar can really make this stick, leading the way, and then Isengard and Rudauer follow them in, it could be very difficult for the defenders to recover from. The guards of KHAZAD-DUM are here. The 2nd Legion Axe Guard are in melee, dishing that AP damage up, but they're in danger of being overwhelmed. As you can see, the sheer number of attackers as they pour in. Meanwhile, the Elven archers, all of the Elven archer companies are starting to open up, which is sorely needed on this front line. I think the Sylvan Rangers should still have ammunition as well? Question mark? I don't know, I can't see the Sylvan Rangers. I mean, there's a huge amount of blood spray coming up, so I'd imagine that they are shooting in there somewhere. A lot of these Dunman Spearmen coming in. This front line over here is relatively solid, with Sylvan Spears, Lothlorien Swordmasters, other Spearmen. These reserves need to come in. I mean, I assume they're hoping that the Elven Infantry is going to be enough to stop the Blackwatch Legion and the Trolls advancing into the Archer line. There are the Sylvan Rangers, and indeed they are shooting into the blobs. The problem they're having, though, is that it was a very thin front line that was defending them from the front, and now momentum could be what carries Angmar and the other attackers into the Elven Archers, and the Elven Archers are the key to this defence at this point. What damage they do here could decide the fight. Of course, Elven Archers can look after themselves in melee, but the defenders really need all their ammunition to be used constructively. Some more KHAZAD-DUM reclaimers over there as well, utilising their thrown axes, doing a lot of damage as well, and the attackers do need to commit forward more than this, honestly, because they're starting to run out of steam here, and a lot of their units are starting to break. Where the front line was strong, now the defenders are starting to collapse in. Some of the Trolls are managing to get through. The Sylvan Rangers have stopped firing, but the Trolls here, they're going to be subject to armour-piercing damage, they're going to be subject to the Elves in melee. Some Guardians of Khazad-Dum are coming forward now, but there's a lot of routing going on. The archers being engaged in melee, but there's only so long these Trolls are going to last, and I think the defenders are going to be just fine, actually. Because the Blackwatch Legion are certainly no melee powerhouses. They can get you in, but once they are in, they're not really as strong as you might think. They're very much a one-trick pony as far as the unit goes. You use them to break a line, and then other units that you follow in with them, are the ones that have to do the damage. Meanwhile, it looks like those Galathan nobles have just pulled out their blades. They're going to go down into melee as well, which will probably be the death knell for the Trolls of Gundabad. Still a bit of a chaotic situation over here now, but you can see there's a lot of routing going on. The guards of KHAZAD-DUM are on the front line. Some Dunman Spearmen have surrounded them, but not a unit of highest quality. Some Rudar Swordsmen coming in now, but I think the defenders have managed to weather the storm, and that could be the defining moment in this battle. We shall see. The attackers still have a lot of manpower to go through, even on this side where they've taken a real pummeling, but with their strengths combined, the Dwarves and the Elves can be a very fearsome opponent indeed, as the attackers have learnt here so far. There goes the Isengard Ballista, though. What are they shooting at? They need to shoot point blank, to be honest with you. They need to scythe through this infantry, because if they can break this infantry apart, maybe all is not lost. The Witcher-Elm Hammerguard are on the front line, and unsurprisingly they're immediately being focused down by a lot of the Elven archers on the hill. More arrows being loose, some more Dunman Berserkers on the front line, but that sort of AP I don't think is going to be terribly useful. The Uruk-hai crossbows are right here as well. They could make a difference as well. The attackers are struggling a little bit here. Meanwhile, over on this side, here we go. A little bit of progress being made. You can see that the first line has essentially been torn through. And I think a lot of this can come down to the fact that Nomadic Axemen and Morannon Infantry are now on the front line, so units of slightly higher quality. It's much more slow-paced fight, a real slow burn on this side of Moria, in comparison to the no-holds-barred slaughter that's happening on the other side, but still, the attackers, it may be very important that the attackers actually win this side, so going for the more considered approach may very well bear fruit in the long run, especially against Cardlin, who you'd have to say are probably the weakest of the three defending factions, and they're largely holding this side by themselves at this point. Some nomadic infantry coming in, so more archers, trying to shore up this position, trying to again skirmish with the enemy. Some more Cardlin reinforcements just waiting, biding their time. What is this over here? There is apparently... it's a single Dunman Spearman. He managed to dodge those elven axes coming his way pretty quickly. What a hero.
Only half our force remains.
He's made it further into to Moria than anyone else, but this is what the attackers needed. Ooh, it's the Witchers. They're in there. They were right on the front line as well. That was very risky in order to get their shots off, but they have managed to do it, and I thought that was the Isengard Ballista initially, but it wasn't. It was the Witchers. There's also some Witcher on Blackweather. There's a Hammer Guard on the front line. I thought they were Blackguard, but well, they are. I think they're just the officers. The Nazkai are on the front line. Nazkai, Hammer Guard. They're trying to push in to kill those Witchers, but oof. Point blank. Never seen the Witchers fire at point blank before. Trying to go after another unit there. I mean, very limited casualties, but they have managed to get some kills, the Witchers, which is more than you see many a time. Ethel Tirith out of ammunition, charging into melee to try and shore up this front line. That could be a bit of a turning point, the use of those Witchers. Not quite as powerful as they maybe could have been, but at least they did something. More Rudar reinforcements on the way through. Rudar Clansmen and the Witch Realm Enslavers. The Clansmen, of course, not the most damaging units to have on the front line, but the Enslavers certainly are, and alongside the Hammer Guard and the Nazkai, that's a very, very potent trio of units. Could very much be viewed as Dwarf Slayers as well. Meanwhile, what's going on over here? I can't help but notice that the Meteor Guard are on the front line, and that's because all of a sudden the floodgates appear to be opening on this side as well. Mordor coming forward with a little bit more intent. More Morannon units and the Mountain Trolls coming into position. The Meteor Guard are over here, but they're in danger of being overwhelmed as well. However, the Cardinal and Catapult getting some absolutely brutal hits, which is almost certain. Yeah, you can see that the Mordor assault already starting to break and just be destroyed. And the Mountain Trolls, certainly not the Juggernauts that the higher tier Trolls are, and you can see that already they're starting to fall away. So this assault looked like initially it was going to be a bit of a problem for the Nomadic Warriors also coming into melee, of course, a little bit stronger than the Nomadic Light Infantry. But yeah, interesting. I mean, it looked like that assault was actually going to go places for a little while there, but the defenders were very quickly on top of it, and the attackers once again stopped in their tracks. It's been very difficult for the attackers to gain any sort of ground in this battle so far, but still, really, the two entrances are still being held, which probably means that the middle portion of this settlement isn't going to see too much action. If we do see the attackers break through, it will then probably just be a straightforward march on the town centre as the defenders try to hold the 3 choke points back there. With those Meteor Guard on the front line, it's going to, especially with the backup of those Dunedain Rangers, it's going to take something pretty substantial for the attackers to break through now. Certainly not battered and bruised units of Morannon infantry and halberds and nomadic warriors. More hits from the catapult, again causing the attackers to become shaken. More crossbow bolts coming in, and yeah, the Mordor assault is just folding under a withering amount of archer fire. I think Galathrun Noble's starting to retreat. It's looking a little bit now like the defenders are starting to plan for the future a little bit here. Maybe starting to think about trying to hold the town centre a little bit more than this outer position now, because they're starting to retreat with some of those units back there by the looks of things, leaving these units behind to try and kill and hold for as long as they can. And they still have a good deal of life left in them on this choke point, I think, but eventually I think they realise that, you know, with all of these axe throwers around, the javelins, more reinforcements on the way forward as well, more Granadine pikemen. I mean, there's still some elven archer fire coming in, but it's looking a little bit now like the attackers will eventually be able to force their way in over here. Well, there goes the Isengard General. Indeed. Losing a general, of course, for the Orcs could potentially be a big deal. I mean, Isengard are a little bit more disciplined than the other Orc factions, but still. The Elven Archers still finding way. The Angmar general as well. All of the generals on this side now dead. Could be a bit of a problem for morale, of course. Evil factions struggling to hold that together a little bit more so than the good factions. Over here, this attack once again seems to have fallen away, but not with eked out some gains. I mean, the Mithril Guard, they are a little bit battered and bruised now. Back come the Nomadic Warriors. Again, the Nomadic Infantry trying to shoot into the Cardland position as best they can, but Cardland won't mind that at all. Like I said, they've taken up a good position in loose formation. Any projectiles that do hit, nice armour, shields. Dunedain captains loitering with intent. Some Miniscarith and Spearmen over there as well. Some out of ammunition sharpshooters, of course, readying their maces for the melee fight that awaits them. It's very difficult here. You can see that I think is another volley from the... yeah, it is. It's the crossbows. You can see that this front line is already wavering. I think Cardland trying to use morale shock tactics against the enemy, something which is popular to use against them. But over here, at least, the attackers do still have a lot left to commit. Morale on infantry. Variag warriors also. Variag warriors probably not too eager to come into the battle, while there's still a lot of projectiles being traded back and forth. Khan raising those round shields to try and defend them, but crossbow bolts I think just going to be too potent for them. More kills from the sharpshooters. We are more or less halfway through. Having a look at the percentage of kills, you can see the defenders are ahead, not by a huge amount though. It has looked very good so far for the defenders, but still the attackers can't. And still they have a lot of manpower left to go through. And over here, finally, the attackers able to force their way inside Moria proper. And you can see, yeah, the defenders are now starting to retreat en masse. Legion Bodyguard trying to get out there. That is actually Barlin. KHAZAD-DUM morale isn't likely to suffer too much if they kill him off. He's trying to run. Well, some Lothlorien axes over here, so I think, you know, Lothlorien, there's also a few units from Cardland over here. The Manatar Roman Guardians shifting their focus to this side. They're going to get up on this cliff over here, perhaps to get some volleys off on the attackers as they move forward, so there's certainly no rest for the weary over on this side. Hearthguard of Amon Sul coming over as well, so Cardland picking up the slack with a bit of range damage over on this side. Cardland is still comfortable over here, which again I think the attackers on the other side should probably wait until they're ready to assault the town centre from all angles rather than attacking it now, because they're going to need the support of Mordor and Khan from the other side, I think, to really be successful. The problem they have though is that Mordor and Khan have really made no progress over here, so they would have to wait a little bit longer. There is still a long way to go in this fight, let's not forget. Cardland's still pretty comfortable over here, it must be said. But honestly, at this point, that catapult is probably the reason why they're not doing this. But, you know, the temptation would be to send forward one of the units of Black Legion of Barad-dûr to push through this line at this point. There's not a huge amount of reinforcements on hand. There's some Miniscarith Spearmen over there. But I doubt they would commit forward the Dunedain captains to a lost cause, which this would rapidly become if a unit of Great Shield Infantry came forward to push through. But the catapult is also right there, which a few well-landed hits and the Black Legion of Barad-dûr would be utterly squashed. Meanwhile, that right there is a nice crispy patch of Manatar Roman Guardians, which is the result of that Isengard Ballista. Oof. Yeah, so Cardland really being made to pay for sending forward their men there. Isengard Ballista bolts sticking out of the cliff wall now. Yet that Isengard Ballista paying some dividends there, making it more difficult for the defence to set up. A few nice kills. There's a few witches running around there, I think. Indeed there are. There's only 4 of them left. I don't know if they still have any ammunition left. Casualties will have come when they were caught out in melee a little bit, but a little bit of extra damage they did down there may very well have been the reason why the attackers were able to break through it all. I mean, the Cholshor axe throwers are moving forward. But I mean, if they do, that's going to invite a counter-attack. Here they go. They're trying to go after the Lothlorien axes. Looks like they are going to start their assault over here without waiting for Mordor and Khan. It's a risky proposition. Rudar clansmen, I think they're just acting as the defensive shield here for the Trollshaw axe throwers, engaging in melee with the Etheltiri. Trollshaw axe throwers, did they just run out of ammo and now they're being committed to melee? Well, either way, it's a very minor engagement, this. The Cardinal Catapult is once again firing, getting a nice hit there on the Variag warriors as they move forwards. Some crispy units in there, but that was a bit of friendly fire by the looks of things. The Miniscarithan archers on the front line are shaken. Slow and steady wins the race from a Mordor and Khandish perspective over on this side. Yeah, and here comes some crossbow volleys, trying to do some damage to the Variag warriors on the front line now. Minas Morgul Chosen is coming forward as well, and I would imagine... Yeah, I mean, this is a nice blob to go after. Minas Morgul Chosen, Variag warriors, Moranon infantry. I'd say that's worthwhile. Crossbows or catapult. And actually, it looks as though Cardland are going to commit the Dunedain captains to this engagement. Oof. That was not good friendly fire. The initial hit was a good one, right into the heart of those Minas Morgul Chosen, but the less infantry they have on the front line, the less likely it is Cardland will be able to hold this choke point for much longer. Dunedain Rangers firing in, so that is body piercing, but from the front, the Minas Morgul Chosen, well armoured, well shielded. They're trying to push their way through, actually, the Minas Morgul Chosen, which won't be too advised when the Cardland reinforcements are on the front line. Dunedain Captains, of course, going to be very, very good against that. And they do have a unit of reserve Miniscarithan spearmen. Even if they do push their way all the way through, more infantry is just going to be waiting for them on the other side. More crossbow bolts coming in, doing a lot of damage to the Variag warriors. They're shaken now. Can't imagine they're going to last too much longer in this sort of fight. What is this? More Moranon infantry? Again, with a little bit more. Oof. Moranon infantry there taking several direct hits from the Cardinal Catapult. Again, more good hits. Already shaken before they ever get into melee. Most unfortunate for Mordor. It's been a real slog for them to try and get any sort of traction over here. They are starting to gain some ground now, but with all that Cardinal range support, going to be difficult. Ooh, hello. That looked like a missed shot, actually, from the Cardinal Catapult. Yeah, very minor hit there. Some rest for the weary there, then. Meanwhile, this fight's still ongoing. Combination of Witch Realm Enslavers now joining in this assault. It's a very small engagement, all things considered, but the Witch Realm Enslavers are a significant addition. As are the Lothlorien Axes. Very weird engagement this, but still. There's actually some Ferodrum Javelins down there who are firing their missiles at what? Well, no matter. Meanwhile, Uruk-hai archers down there trying to soften up this defensive position over here, and this is good news for the attackers. They're able to get their ballista into a good position, they're able to get their archers into a good position. And now they need to make a choice. I mean, if I were the defenders personally, I would retreat back inside the town centre. It would be much more difficult for the attackers to get good value with these units over here. If you're back behind here, you can see the catapult shots in the distance there. Dust being thrown up by the advancing Mordor army. But if they stay here, this is just a needless loss of life, really, at the hands of a very cheap unit of Uruk-hai archers. What is this? This is Balin and his one remaining Legion bodyguard trying to get in here to kill this depleted unit of Uruk-hai archers. And to be fair, the Uruk-hai archers will probably struggle to take those two down. The elves are eager to hold on to this position over here, though, or maybe they're eager to break these units over here, and then they will retreat. The Thranduil Rangers are right here, though, so a break from that perspective for the defenders. Oof, this catapult has been in such a good position for them to hold. And Cardland, actually, I think they've had a bit of a change of heart. They fancied themselves to hold this ground. The Black Legion of Barad-dûr have not been committed forward before now. And the Warns of Tir Gorthad are now on the front line, as well as the Dunedain captains, so with the encouragement that those units will offer, Cardland will be able to hold their ground for that much longer, which is bad news for the attackers once again. Mordor and Khand running up against a brick wall. Dunedain Rangers possibly out of ammunition at this point. Looks like they may very well be committed to the front line as well. So Nomadic Marauders firing at point blank. Perhaps if they are out of ammunition, which it looks like they are, they pulled out their blades. Getting them into loose formation and using them as a bit of a lightning rod for the attackers is actually very worthwhile, because if the attackers are not being observant rather, they will notice. Well, there goes Balin, shanked by the Uruk-hai archers. If they don't notice these Dunedain Rangers out of ammunition, this is actually a bit of a waste of ammo for them. Miniscarithan sharpshooters getting into position. There's still a lot of reinforcements, including Manatar Roman Guardians, Tharbad Warhammers, Wardens of Tir Gurthad, Miniscarithan spears back there as well. Meanwhile, it looks as though the defenders are now going to retreat back within the town centre. Ranadine pikemen still in a big old cluster over here. What have we got down here? Ferodrum javelins. We saw in the last fight at Hobbiton that they weren't particularly resolute in the late game. In spite of that, they do have good stats and they are a very useful unit indeed. Meanwhile, these Sylvan Spears acting as a rear guard now, as some vile Uruk-hai move to overwhelm them. It's only Uruk-hai archers, so they might be able to get a couple more token kills before presumably the assault on the town centre will start to begin. Let's see over here. Maithit Ilazgalan, we haven't seen them yet in the fight, so they will still have all their ammunition. Also worryingly for the attackers, the Karis Galadon's Guardians are here. Very tough to wear your way down from the front if you have no means of shooting them from afar. They may be multiple HP, but they are still pikemen. Meanwhile, more crossbow bolts flowing into this front line, and still this assault doesn't seem to be going anywhere fast. Some more range pressure being applied, some of the Variag bowmen. But still, I think the Khand ranged units have not really been able to deal any sort of damage, and Cardland have been very comfortable sort of absorbing the pressure they've been able to put on. Some more Mordor halberds coming forward now. But again, with all of these pikes on the front line, I don't think Cardland will mind the sight of some depleted halberdiers. Wardens of Tir Gurthad in particular are a very solid pike unit indeed. Let's see, around on halberds. Yeah, I mean, they are marching in phalanx formation. To be fair, some of these Dunedain captains have overextended themselves a little bit, as well as some of those Miniscarithan sharpshooters. So Cardland may very well need to push forward a little bit more. There goes another crossbow volley though. I can't imagine these units are going to stick around on the front line for too much longer. Meanwhile, as we cycle back to the town centre, we can see that the Uruk-hai archers. This is a bit of a conundrum for the defenders. Here in the late game, the attackers do still have some ranged tools, Uruk-hai archers, but the Ferodrum javelins are probably the thing I would be most concerned with, as well as any Uruk-hai crossbows, and of course that Isengard ballista, which can be especially nasty. Forward come the Lothlorien axes, closing into melee. And they'll be able to, of course, very easily kill quite a lot of these Uruk-hai archers. But in turn, the Ferodrum javelins will be able to kill an awful lot of them. We do still have a few units, including the Sindar archers, which still have ammunition. And they do still have those Galathran nobles around here somewhere, I think. Did they? Were they committed down here? Yeah, there they are. Waiting their turn, but the Sindar archers, of course, firing way up into the sky. Not the easiest shot to make. There's also some Rudar axemen moving forward as well. They'd be more useful against the dwarves than the elves, but Lothlorien at least do have decent armour value, so the AP isn't completely wasted, but of course very low skill on the Rudar axemen. What do we have here? Again, just depleted units trying to hold the attackers at bay for the time being. The attackers trying to utilise their ranged tools to soften the enemy up, and then presumably they'll come forward with all their force and try and destroy them all at once. Depends on whether they have enough left in the tank to do that. I mean, they have a few units left. They've got some Essenmore's Troll Hunters. It does look like more ranged units over here than anything else. Snaga Skirmishers, some crossbows. Yeah, there isn't much in the way of melee units that they have left over here, so it might actually be worth the defenders' time to try and counter-attack and destroy the attackers on this side before Mordor and Khan make too much progress on the other side, but that would be a mighty risk to take, seeing as holding these choke points has worked so well for the defenders thus far. Still some Hearthguard of Amon Sul, a little bit depleted, but still very solid unit to have in the late game. Nonetheless, there's more crispy corpses over here as Nurad footmen starting to push forward. Their AP will be useful against those Miniska Rithlin units on the front line. They're trying to push in with those war clubs and those big old shields. But doubtless, that is what has drawn the ire of the Cardinal Catapult, which I can't quite tell if it's firing. Is it firing? Not for the time being, but it did get a few volleys off. What is firing, however, are the sharpshooters. Once again, utilising those crossbow bolts to good effect. Again, you can see that it looks as though the assault is once again running out of steam because of the damage that Cardinal are able to deal to the attackers at range. Fire arrows. Fire arrows are a bit of a waste to use on the sharpshooters because fire arrows do shoot slower, doesn't do any additional damage. Another catapult shot. Good catapult shots as well. That's going to be enough to send some units routing, I would imagine. Dunedain Rangers being committed to melee to make sure they can't push their way through. That's another layer of units they're going to have to try and push through if they do. That is what the Nurad footmen are trying to do. But they're going to be taking such huge amounts of damage when they do this. Dunedain Rangers now also fighting. More crossbow bolts. Perhaps they're hoping for a bit of friendly fire to take effect. Here comes another unit of Miniska Rithlin Spearmen. So still, the attackers on this side having to deal with yet more basic Cardinal units. Oh, excuse me. Allergy season truly does suck. Some Sauron's Will there in the background, Miniska Rithlin sharpshooters. Once again opening up on the attackers as they move forward. Variag warriors with those large curved swords. Those flags on their back, a la Shogun 2. Some more Wardens of Tirn Gorthab being committed forward here, although at this point I would say, I mean, if the Black Legion of Barad-dûr would have come forward at this point, this front line would be lost. That's a lot of Variag warriors that are being committed forward. The Sauron's Will are here as well, so the pressure is starting to ramp up over on this side, and I don't know how much longer Cardinal will be able to hold this front line for. More bolts. Tharbad Warhammer's being committed forward, so Cardinal are committed to trying to hold the enemy here, which is admirable. But they're going to need to make sure that that yields results, because that means that over on this side they don't have to worry about Cardinal retreating to the town centre and helping out against them. Brandonine Pikemen and Rudauer Axemen on the front line, but again, in a match of pure quality, Lothlorien are obviously leagues ahead of Rudauer. These Ranadine Rangers are trying to do what damage they can, but the losses they suffered very early on in the match may very well prove to be quite telling indeed. And they're not really getting a huge amount of kills. They're getting a few on the Maitha Ilaz Galan, I suppose. You can see the fire arrows, and that is a lumbering sight on the horizon. Cardinal have committed forward a lot of resources to this front line at this point, and now they're going to have to try and repel the mighty Olag High. I mean, with the Tharbad Warhammers and with crossbow support, they should be able to do it, to be fair. Because it is a very thick front line that the Olag High are going to have to try and work their way through, but that is a sight which Cardinal really wouldn't want to see. The red eye emblem of the Black Legion of Barad-dûr, and now they're going to try and push through the lines. And the chaos which could ensue here, do they have more reinforcements coming forward? Well, the Variag Bowmen are being committed to melee, so that's something, I suppose, but here, this could be where things get a little bit dicey for Cardinal. They need more reinforcements, I think, here, the attackers. If they send forward another unit, another couple of units of even just basic infantry, they could really make life difficult here for Cardinal. Because those Olag High You can see how much tankier they are than the Mountain Trolls. The Mountain Trolls fell by the wayside pretty quickly against just basic units, but the Olag High able to mix it in melee with even Tharbad Warhammers.
Only half the
Okay.
enemy force remains.
Sharpshooters, I think they're out of ammunition, they've got their shields out. So half guard of Amon Sul are now firing in, but they're not really designed for dealing damage that quickly at range. It's still a welcome bit of support, I'm sure, for the Cardland infantrymen, but you can see here just the trolls with their mighty hammers and clubs dealing grievous damage to this Cardland front line, and this is what the attackers on this side have surely been waiting for quite some time. More. Some Greenwatch Garrison footmen, but 16 Greenwatch Garrison footmen are not going to be enough to turn around the fortunes of Cardland over here. I mean, if the Olag High do start dying rapidly, they might be able to salvage this situation, but with the support of the Black Legion and those Variag warriors, I think it's somewhat unlikely. I'm surprised that there aren't more reinforcements on the way forwards, though. We'll keep an eye on that, meanwhile. On the other side, still not a lot of movement, which is to be expected. The attacking front line is made up of primarily pikes, so they're not going to make a lot of progress too quickly. Really, the real, quote-unquote, real battle is happening between ranged units at this point, it seems. Rodram Javelin's still trying to do some damage. The Isengard Ballista trying to get into place. There's 2 Witches still left alive, and they're holding their swords very menacingly. Almost like they're posing for a movie. Did they leave their Ballista behind? They did. Interesting move, because I'm sure it still had ammunition. Oh, excuse me. Meanwhile, Olag High starting to die off. But they have made a lot of ground up now, Mordor and Cardland, Mordor and Karn, I should say, but Cardland trying to push back. Some Minister Riften sharpshooters pulling out their maces, getting into melee, as well as that very depleted unit of Pike, so maybe Cardland feel as though this situation is not hopeless. And goes another Troll. What do the attackers have left in reserve out here? Not much by the looks of things. Brotherhood Shadowblades back there, the Khandish General. Brotherhood the Axe, the Sword, Variag Bowman. I mean, they don't have much left, do they? But they need to commit forward more. Again, these wave-based assaults have not really worked out too well for Mordor and Karn on this side. Cardland have done a good job at holding the line for a long time. I'm sure eventually they will crumble. You know, Mordor and Karn between them still have some pretty scary units, and Cardland at this point are looking very depleted, but laying an assault on the town centre as well. Mordor and Karn are not going to have an awful lot left, which is not the news I'm sure that the attackers on the other side were hoping for. To be fair, there's still a few units back here which could yet cause a real problem, and you can see there the Rudar Axemen actually pulling back as the Karas Galadhon's Guardians threaten to get into melee on the front line, and I don't know, I think the attackers are really going to struggle. I really do think that the defenders at this point have put themselves into a very advantageous position. They've just got a lot of quality units left. Something which the attackers, they have a few. Attenmore's Troll Hunters, Ferodram Javelins, Temple Executioners and Shadowblades on the other side, Brotherhood of the Axe. But I just don't think they have enough quality or numbers left to go toe-to-toe with what's left of the defenders. Urukai Archers. Forward come the Brandalline Pikemen. Very limited amounts of damage going to be dealt by those 16 Urukai Archers, but every little helps at this point. Attenmore's Troll Hunters being used as makeshift infantry at this point, but their spears aren't going to be terribly damaging. Lothlorien once again. Some axes and some swordmasters on the front line. The Crownodine Pikemen trying to use their pikes to keep them at bay, but they're not in the best of formations here. I'm a big fan of the Crownodine Pikemen, but this might be a bridge too far for them. Maitha Ilazgalan starting to use their javelins. Attenmore's Troll Hunters also going to use their javelins, but they're also being targeted down. That's going to be a pretty lethal volley, yeah. A few of those Maitha Ilazgalan falling by the wayside. Let's see what's going on over here though. Cardland's still holding the line. Just about. The second unit of Black Legion of Barad-dûr did come forward. The Minotaur Roman Guardians being committed to the front line, interestingly enough. Forward come. And the other unit of Sauron's will as well. Lappy's Mordor army. Pretty much everything being committed forward from him at this point. Actually, the Temple Executioners coming forward as well. So this should be where they finally force their way onto the next section of the settlement. You can see the Black Legion of Barad-dûr pushing their way forward. Of course, if there were falling mechanics, I'm sure this would mean that the Minotaur Roman Guardians would be falling off both sides of the bridge of KHAZAD-DUM. Oh, excuse me. Still some Dunedain Rangers left alive, actually, which is pretty impressive. Tharbad Warhammer's back here as well. There's the officer, the one who uses a shield and a sword and has a different helm. Oof. I knocked him down with the hammer. Gods, I was strong then. The hammer is a weapon for true warriors. Meanwhile, Galathram nobles moving forward to support the Minotaur Roman Guardians, and that will certainly give the Black Legion of Barad-dûr some pause. Actually, the Brotherhood of the Sword are in here as well, so it looks like for the most part the attackers on this side are starting to just fling everything forward and hoping that if they attack all at once, they'll catch the defenders unawares and push their way right on through. I think there's still a unit that's defending up here. I think there is a unit of Lothlorien Blades, but they can of course be used later on. Beriag Bowman also shooting in support, trying to help kill the Hearthguard of Amon-Sul, but very heavily armoured and shielded, the Hearthguard of Amon-Sul. Few units can take arrows better than they can. But still, bit of range support, the Black Legion of Barad-dûr pushing forward, the Brotherhood of the Sword in support of them.
Come on! We've lost control of the city!
The Dwarven, Mr. Dwarf is quite alarmed by what's going on now. Rodram Javelins have moved forward into melee, pulling out their big war clubs. But they're also taking javelin fire. Some Cardlin units over here as well. Uruk-hai archers, some Uruk-hai pikes. It's all looking a bit depleted over here though, but on the other side, the Cardlin and Mordor push might finally be coming to something. And again, you can see the point where the attackers have really struggled to make it any further. Some Snaga skirmishers in reserve, some Branadyne Rangers. Still some ranged support coming in. Still those Lothlorien Blades. I mean, the defenders are starting to run low, actually. All things considered. The Catapult crew is being committed to melee now. A sign that times are certainly desperate for the defenders now. Just being used as more warm bodies on the front line. The Temple Executioners and the Brotherhood of the Sword put together are going to be pretty damn difficult to stop, honestly. The Galathram nobles and the Hearthguard of Amon-Sul will give it a bloody good go, though. That is... That's Brotherhood of the Axe? No, that's the Sauron's Will. So the Brotherhood of the Axe, there's another unit, Brotherhood of the Sword, coming forward. Where are the Brotherhood of the Axe? Ah, there they are. As well as the Shadow Blades. I mean, Khand have still got a decent amount left. Could Khand be the heroes of the day? Forward come the Sauron's Will, again with their clubs. Temple Executioners taking damage. The Sindar Archers trying to offer a little bit of support. I mean, they did have a good sort of crescent-shaped engagement here, the defenders, but I don't know, I think overwhelming force could be applied here. Another unit of Brotherhood of the Sword are coming forward now. Can the defenders hold on? All of a sudden, I'm not quite sure. The final phase of this fight is pretty much underway at this point. We might not be into the final 10k frames, but having a look at the percentage of kills, defenders are still ahead, but it's only by 2%. The attackers starting to put on some pressure here. Can the defenders hold on? It's not as if they've got elite Dwarven units in the late game to pull them through. Well, I say that, they do have Mithril Guard, but they've seen combat. They're a little bit depleted. It's going to be down to some of these Lothlorien units in the late game here. The Uruk-hai crossbows, meanwhile, are getting ready to loose a volley. The Animal Troll Hunter is going to try and get out of melee range before the Mithril Guard and Lothlorien Blades get into melee with them. They need to stop those crossbowmen from firing, because at this point, it's going to be small margins by which this game is won and lost, I feel. And those crossbows are going to be able to get a point-blank volley into the Lothlorien blades. Very good news for the attackers, and all of a sudden, looking pretty backs to the walls here. Ethel Tirith getting into position. Sindar Archers trying to get closer to the action over here. The Galadhrim nobles facing off against the Brotherhood of the Sword, and the Temple Executioners just in behind them. The Sauron's Will, by the looks of things. There's a unit of Ferodrim Javelins? How on earth did they get over here? Yeah, the Sauron's Will are looking pretty out of their depth, especially with those arrows being shot point blank into them. Though that arrow support could be absolutely vital, as well as the Might of Ilazgalan. Ethel Tirith and Sindar Archers using their arrows. Brotherhood of the Sword, of course, are unshielded, as are the Temple Executioners. They may be multiple HP, and have good armour, but no shields. So this could be the Defenders' saving grace, but they still have the Shadow Blades and the Brotherhood of the Axe to deal with on this side as well. Certainly no slouches when it comes to opponents. Forward comes some Variag Bowmen. It's a crucial engagement, this. Brotherhood of the Sword being defeated now, and this is the problem. They're very, very good in melee. Very, very skillful. But against arrows, they are certainly not the best. Still one of the Black Legion of Barad-dûr in there by the looks of things, with that big old shield. How are the Temple Executioners doing? I mean, there's still 25 of them left, but they may be in danger a little bit of being overwhelmed as well. A lot of those arrows are really hitting their mark. Those Variag Bowmen, out of ammunition, coming forward in melee. The numbers might be the key here more than anything else. They also do have shields, so they'll be a little bit more resilient against the archer fire which is coming their way. You know, what is going on over here? A bold counter-attack here from the elves, the Lothlorien blades. I think that's really the key now. They're getting into melee with the Attenmore's Troll Hunters. The Mithril Guard. I think the defenders will be victorious over here, because too much of what the attackers have are ranged units, and it's very, very strong Elven and Dwarven infantry they're still going up against in melee. And then they could be able to transition a really powerful unit like the Mithril Guard over to the other side to meet the challenge of what Khand are going to be bringing forward in the late game. Meanwhile, you can see there the Hranadine Rangers pulling out their swords. But once again, the attackers being forced back. It's a very close battle, this, isn't it? Routing Snarg skirmishers, unsurprising that they routed immediately when they got engaged in melee, but yeah, the attackers have got very little left over here. Honestly, I would say that, you know, just having one unit over here to sort of marshal what the attackers do would probably be enough. Everyone else needs to head over to stop Khand moving forward. There goes Khan's general. Killed at the hands of the Temple Executioners and Variag Bowmen. It is worth saying as well that those Brotherhood Shadow Blades, they have a ranged attack. So if it does come down to it, they could be able to do quite a lot of damage to those Karas Galadhon's Guardians. I think the defenders will probably still be alright though, because the Karas Galadhon's Guardians are such a strong unit in melee. And they do have a bit of support. I mean, we'll see. The Shadow Blades and the Brotherhood of the Axe still back there. Ethel Tirith. I think the Sindar Archers, did they get committed to melee or did they retreat? No, they did get committed to melee. I can see one of them in melee. Only 14 of them left, and those Temple Executioners, with the newfound support from the Variag Bowmen, making some inroads here. It's very, very close, this. Meanwhile, some routing units, once again, who routed through the town centre. Here comes a lot of support, though. And this is what I said I would have done. And they just have some Lothlorien sword masses. Are the attackers on this side completely spent? Pretty much. They're being hunted down by Lothlorien blades. Hranadine Rangers, I mean, they might lose this fight, the Lothlorien blades. It's unlikely. I think they should still win it. It's only crossbows and rangers they're going up against in melee after all, but this of course gives the defenders the chance they need to commit forward reinforcements over here, and as soon as the Karas Galadhon's Guardians get into melee, I feel as though that will be it for the attackers. Despite a valiant surge in the late game here from Khand and Mordor, I think the defenders will still be able to hold firm. What have we here? Brotherhood Shadow Blades moving forwards. Still a few units here on the periphery, a few Brotherhood of the Sword. come the Shadow Blades. Presumably they're going to try and use their throwing knives. Because there isn't many Temple... Well, there aren't many Temple Executioners left, only 18. Ooh, and immediately they're being focused down by the Ethel Tirith on top of the hill.
Our man no longer commands.
Well, there they go. Of course, Karas Gladhon's Guardians are multiple HP, so it's going to take more than the single volley to kill them off. They're going to use the walls as cover. I mean, this really is the final roll of the dice, I feel like, for the attack, because if they can kill off a lot of these pikemen here and now with the throwing knives and then commit forward the Brotherhood of the Axe and the Shadow Blades in melee, maybe not all is lost. But it's still going to be an uphill fight in every sense of the word, I think. The fact these Ethel Tirith still have ammunition is also proven to be a real boon for the defenders. Another volley coming in. The Karas Gladhon's Guardians actually pulling back as a result of those throwing daggers. Those Shadow Blades, though, taking a lot of damage at this point. The Brotherhood of the Axe are moving in. Their AP is, again, not going to be utterly wasted on Lothlorien, but it's not going to be as useful as maybe they would like. If this were a Dwarven last defense, then maybe it would be a little bit more of a substantial thing. Ethel Tirith still with ammunition, still mercilessly shooting the Brotherhood Shadow Blades, but without the pikes on the front line. The addition of the Brotherhood of the Axe should be enough to at least force them through this defense. A lone Cardland Spearman trying to block the advance of Khan. Probably not going to go too well for him though. Yeah, the Ethel Tirith at this point going to have to pull back with the Brotherhood of the Axe all up in their face. Let's go and see what's happening over here, because this could still be a significant engagement. Yeah, and I mean, the attackers are technically speaking going to win this, because now they've got the Hranadine Rangers and the Uruk-hai crossbows, so perhaps still there is yet another twist in the tale. Having a unit of crossbows and a unit of rangers, as depleted as they may be, still have ammunition in this late stage of the game. Very much fine margins that this is going to be won and lost by. There's still the Mithril Guard in the town centre holding down the fort. I don't know though, it's still... everything's still very much on the line. The Ethel Tirith, the Brotherhood of the Axe creeping into melee with them. But the problem that they're going to have still, I think, is that the Karas Gladhon's Guardians are simply so strong when they have their pikes down. Brotherhood of the Axe trying to worm their way around the pikes and actually being somewhat successful. And now he could get into melee with the Ethel Tirith and do a fairly substantial amount of damage. There's that weird death animation where the corpse goes crazy and then it sticks in the ground and T-poses, 2D. Very weird, isn't it? Good old Medieval 2. And the Elven Pikes are actually retreating once again, so this bold push from Khan has actually worked. It is really coming down to the wire here, though. Lothlorien Blades broken. Combination of the Temple Executioners and Variag Bowmen doing the business, although there's only 10 Temple Executioners left. They're very strong, but they've been in melee for a long time at this point. So really it's coming down to Karas Gladhon's Guardians and the Mithril Guard. Are they going to be enough to secure victory? Possibly. Because over here, that little depleted unit of Swordmasters was defeated by the Hranadine Rangers and Uruk-hai crossbowmen. So let's have a look at what the percentages are saying now. It's dead even. Absolutely dead even. And if it came down to a pure melee fight, of course, defenders would win. But the fact they do still have those rangers and do still have those crossbows, and I would assume the Shadow Blades didn't use up all of their ammunition, so they might have a volley or two of throwing daggers left in them. That could affect this fight in a pretty major fashion. Place your bets. What's going on down here? Yeah, the Shadow Blades, they did take a lot of damage from those Elven Archers, to be fair. But still, they're a strong unit in melee as well. The General's still alive with his glaive.
We have lost control of the city.
There's Haldia, left behind and being mobbed by a bunch of Variag Bowmen, Temple Executioners and a few Brotherhood of the Sword as well. As with every battle, it's canon that Haldir must perish. He really is the Kenny of 3rd Age Reforged. And he is almost certainly going to die there. Meanwhile, Brotherhood Shadowblades, Variag Bowman, and Brotherhood of the Axe. Unfortunately, however, this is exactly the sort of engagement that Lothlorien would want. And unfortunately for them, they're not going to receive support from the crossbows from the rear, I think, as the Mithril Guard counter-attacking. And that might be key. Being a little bit bold with the Mithril Guard and sort of chasing off, and the Uruk-hai crossbows are lagging far too far behind. Looks like they're out of ammo as well, which might be it. There goes Haldir. I think that's going to be it. The Ethel Tirith are over here. It's also worth saying that the Mithril Guard, as soon as those Uruk-hai crossbows are dealt with, will be able to back the Elven pikemen up. The Shadowblades, I think, are trying to push their way through. Not the sort of thing you typically associate with an assassin unit. I don't know, I mean, the Karos Gladhon's Guardians, their line is being bent a little bit. Forward come the Temple Executioners, very depleted at this point though. Brotherhood of the Axe fighting on the front line, but it's really the sort of engagement they loathe. Especially against an elite pike unit like this. Oh, excuse me. Ethel Tirith getting closer to the action, maybe at this point just thinking, you know what, we can't get a good shot with our bows, so we're just going to pull out our blades and offer a little bit more support in melee. What is that? Some routing 4th Legion. What about the Mithril Guard? What say they? Uruk-hai crossbows do still have ammunition. Granadine Rangers trying to shoot point blank. Those crossbows, though, they were lagging too far behind. It was all a matter of if they could synchronise perfectly here to try and pull this out in the late game, the attackers, and unfortunately for them, they weren't able to do so. And the Karos Gladhon's Guardians and the Mithril Guard are going to be too strong to overcome. Rudauer have been destroyed. The Shadowblades making some inroads, to be fair. They're starting to work up the line, actually, of the Karos Gladhon's Guardians. Worrying signs for Lothlorien. And this means the Mithril Guard are going to have to stop dragging their heels a little bit. They're going to have to stop messing around and playing with their food and kill off those crossbows. So close, though. Probably the closest Moria siege I've ever shown. What have we back here? Yeah, they're a little bit stretched out. You can see the Uruk-hai crossbows are trying to get in here as well to finally finish off the Karos Gladhon's Guardians, but the Mithril Guard are just going to be too strong in melee overall. There aren't enough Temple Executioners left, aren't enough Brotherhood of the Axe left, not enough Shadow Blades. So it's all a moot point in the end, but the Mithril Guard do need to keep chasing the Uruk-hai crossbows, otherwise they will start shooting. So it's sort of a game of cat and mouse, really, which is probably why there's still about 3,000 frames left, which, honestly, I think it's safe for us to go up to ×2 speed at this point. Those Uruk-hai crossbows, though, going to get a point-blank volley, killing off a few more of the Mithril Guard. Kiting with crossbows. An Isengard Odyssey. And the Mithril Guard are going to be able to duck behind the hill. Yeah, and I mean that is a good point actually, because now with those crossbows in support, the Mithril Guard may very well lose this fight. Now that I think of it, because they have to stay in the town centre or they'll lose it. Oh my, could the attackers pull this out? The crossbows, they may very well have been dragging their heels, but they may. Here come the Shadow Blades. The announcer is still really fancying the chances of the dwarves here, and I assume that's because of the power of the Mithril Guard in melee. After all, it is primarily Variag Bowman they're having to kill now at this point. There really isn't, I don't think there's actually any Temple Executioners left. But could this be what wins them the game? Uruk-hai Crossbowman. There are the Shadow Blades as well, Khan's General. preserving his life. The only general to still be alive, I think. No, actually, there is the Mordor general. There are still 2 Temple Executioners left alive. There's one pikeman who I think is going to try and interrupt the crossbows from firing. But this is the difference here. There goes the Mordor general. Cut down. You saw how quickly the Meteor Guard were able to clean up what was left of the infantry. There go the Variag Bowmen as well. Yeah, I think the attackers, they came so close. So close to greatness. There are the Shadow Blades trying to sort of get in the way, because the crossbows, I don't think they'll have enough ammunition left to kill off all of the Meteor Guard, and then they'll just get dumpstered in melee, of course. More kills. It's so close. I think the Meteor Guard are just going to have too much, and I think it's going to be, yeah, look, 100 to 100%. We are very literally coming within a few men of one another. One of the closest sieges I've ever shown. And I think the defenders are going to win it, which should make up people quite happy. Yeah, the Uruk-hai crossbows and Shadow Blades at this point are not going to have enough strength to defeat the Meteor Guard in melee. Uruk-hai crossbows are wavering. It was a bold final effort from the attackers, but ultimately the damage that was done to them in the early game, just too much to overcome. Especially when you're dealing with the Meteor Guard. So that's it. Uruk-hai crossbows killed to the last man. Still 700 frames left. What's going on? Ah, one of the Brotherhood of the Sword. Lagging behind. He wouldn't have made too much of a difference. If it was actually like a unit of like 10 or so Brotherhood of the Sword, I would have said that that was the difference between victory and defeat. But one wouldn't have made enough of a difference. This is going to be it. The final duel. The final man left standing for the attackers, and he is going to charge into melee and immediately get cut down. Indeed they have. And only 14 men left standing. Well, technically 16 if you count those two 4th Legion Shield Guard. But very well played to the defenders, of course. Very well played to everyone, actually. When a battle is this close, you can always point out very little things that could have been done in order to reverse the outcome. Like, I would say maybe the thing more than anything was the loss of those Rangers from Rudar coming forward a little bit too quickly. If their Ranger unit had been more intact for the late push, then I feel as though it would have gone the other way, because having a full unit for Anodyne Rangers would have been very, very difficult for the defenders to deal with. Also, maybe Mordor could have committed forward a unit of Black Legion Barad-dûr earlier to put a little bit more pressure on Cardinal, and Cardinal were a little bit too comfortable for too long in that fight. But still, Roger that did very well with Cardinal, obviously nearly 4,000 kills. KHAZAD-DUM, all the defenders did well. All the attackers did quite well, to be honest. There was very little in the way of glaring errors that I can point out. Just a very good battle all around. So big thank you to Eclipse for sending this one too. Let's see what did the damage for Eclipse. What was his MVP? He didn't have any Rangers, so we're not going to see the ludicrous amount of kills I'm sure the Sylvan Rangers in particular managed to pick up for Lothlorien. 541 kills though for a unit of 1st Legion pikes. It goes to show how powerful high tier pikes can be. I'm always a big fan of cheap pikes because it's very easy to be cost efficient with them. But expensive pikes, that's the level of kills they can get, because expensive pikes, they can kill things quickly, which is something cheap pikes with their lower stats and damage certainly can't do. But 1st Legion pikes able to do so, and in that initial fight where KHAZAD-DUM really just held the line for a long time against those 3 armies trying to force their way in, 1st Legion pikes obviously doing very, very well for themselves. A lot of units breaking 200 as well. The other unit of 1st Legion, the Meteor Guard, obviously the last unit left standing, the heroes of the day. 4th Legion, Hammers of Gundabad doing very well for themselves. 2nd Legion, a lot of AP of course in KHAZAD-DUM's roster. A lot of units breaking 100 as well. Only a few units not breaking 100. A couple of units of 2nd Legion, Legion Bodyguard, and a unit of 4th Legion as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, because this was probably one of the better sieges I've ever done, to be honest with you, especially on Moria. Moria, obviously, I think this is the closest siege on Moria I've certainly ever done. One of the closest sieges, full stop, I've done. Only 16 men left standing for the defenders at the end. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this. I'm sure you did, because the defenders won, and it was very, very close. And next, I'm not sure what's going to be next, to be honest with you. There are a few things I have on the back burner, which I can bring in, of course, as the release date. The 1st of July, I think, is the tentative release date that's been given for .97. Obviously, it was pushed back a little bit, I think, because of campaign-related stuff that they're trying to sort out, which is fair enough. Obviously, campaign is all new for Reforged in the new patch. So there's still a little bit of time to kill on 0.96 until July the 1st, when we can start really getting in some stuff from 0.97. So, again, hope you enjoyed this, and hope you'll join me for whatever is next.